That's what we're dealing with. That is what we're dealing with, that package of investigation where the commission could have dismissed all these points without even speaking to her. So the residue, let's put it this way, the residue could not be any more serious than the substance. And I view that other as residue. And if that residue involved Calabar, going back to the Manning government, I took that in a certain way. And as for the police investigation, it was the same allegations that the police was investigating. The same allegations. And therefore, if the Integrity Commission, with all its powers, would have investigated without reference to Ms. McDonald and determined that there was no substance to it, I said on the last Friday, or whenever I spoke, that in the event that they come up with anything, I will not hesitate to act. But given the fact that police investigations are legendary in Trinidad and Tobago, what am I being asked to do? To expect that they will be different or have different investigations to the Integrity Commission? Maybe, maybe not.
What do you tell people who say that your judgment in choosing to ignore or to not take on board these two investigations was flawed?
That is not a correct statement. If I didn't take the investigations on board, I would not have removed Ms. McDonald in March 2016. I said, and I'm going to say it for a third time, it was the investigation into the allegations made against her at the Ministry of Housing that caused me to ask her to step aside from the portfolio so that that investigation can proceed without any interference on her. And I'm satisfied now that that investigation has produced nothing.
But I don't know that we know that.
Well,
the Integrity Commission is not investigating the issue of the HD because the exoneration did not refer to the question of HBC homes. It referred to John Mr. McClatchy and payments to him and so on. So I am not clear that...
Let's put it this way. I'm a little clearer on it than you are, and I take responsibility for the actions of bringing back Ms. McDonald. I take responsibility for that based on my analysis of the overall situation. I don't expect everyone will agree with me on that. I had a decision to make, and I made it. In the fullness of time, we will all be clearer on this matter. But for the moment, I took that decision, and I take responsibility for that decision. And I separate that decision from the operations of her swearing in.
But with the knowledge of hindsight, are you prepared to admit that you made a mistake when that was done?
Well, had I known that it would have ended up in this way, had I known that the swearing in would have become the national conversation, I may not have done that. Had I known that the swearing in became an issue. Because that's what we're dealing with now. What happened at the swearing in? Right? That was the issue. I mean, if I had a crystal ball to look into it and say, if I appoint her, the swearing in to the post will result in this, clearly I wouldn't have. But the bottom line is, I had no way of knowing that the swearing in would have resulted in this situation. However, that's a different question to whether, in fact, I should have brought her back. I made a decision based on my overall view of the landscape, and of course there are those who agree and those who don't agree. Okay?
Yeah. Well, I guess the people who claim, well, if you listen to the pronouncements of people like Marlene Singh and the former Prime Minister, who say that it reflects on your leadership and that you should resign now. I think one of the points that they are saying is that there were so many warnings that you had, apart from what was going on with the independent.
I don't really want to spend, any time on those two people. They have their point of view. And others, but those particular two people, they have their point of view, and they have had it for other reasons and for a long time. I have given you the basis on which I have taken the decision. I do not act capriciously, and I dare say in haste. I made deliberate judgments, and along the way, in this area, there will be pros and there will be cons. And not everything you do will work out the way you've planned it. And the last person to be talking about judgment is Kamla Prasad Bisesa. Because we had her as Prime Minister in this country. And it is because of her good, consistent, good judgment why today she's there. I could point to a litany of situations, but I'm not judging my performance by her. I'm simply saying the advice being given is not coming from a quarter of any great experience or talent.
Could I ask a question on the security now at the President's office? The fact is that there were two persons who have been described as community leaders who were guests of this meeting. One name is not on the list, but one name was on. Does the President have within his knowledge or in his office, does he receive, for example, security reports that will enable him, if a guest list comes to him, to make some kind of determination that some bearers will win and say...
It is my understanding that some elements of the national security apparatus would communicate the special branch. So, but it is not for, again, let us not, when you get down to the personal as to what the President should or shouldn't have done, I'm not really going there at all. Where I stopped when I spoke a little while ago is whether the protocols of going to the President's office should be more rigorous. And this is not a matter for the President per se as a person. This is a matter for the President's office. And if what has happened there as described is what has happened, the various versions, clearly there is need for an improvement in those protocols being more robust and more faithfully followed.
Yeah, but the point I was making had to do with the security of the President, whoever he may be. And in other words, if Mr. Burke's name had been given, in fact, to the President's office, I don't know that the issue of his presence there would have been irrelevant. People would have, in fact, still talked about it, and it would still have presented an issue of the security of the President.
And I agree, and that's why...
If the President's office is in a position to vet even a guest list that it gets, if it gets the kind of security information from the agency.
If it gets that information, the office would be in a position to do so. But I don't know that such information would be available in all circumstances. And the statement made by President House is as much as we have to go on this for this particular development. But clearly, there was an issue here, and the issue requires some review so as to ensure that that kind of development doesn't fall upon us again.
Dr. Ali, I'm still unsure exactly why this was going on.
You're unsure?
I'm still unsure because I'd like to ask you, is it because of the reported breaking protocol at the President's House, security protocol, or was it the fact of who Mr. Burke is and her affiliation with him? Was it her affiliation with Mr. Bill, or somebody like Mr. Bill, somebody that people call community leaders or whatnot, or was it the fact that...
All right, since you're having difficulty, I have to assume that the rest of the country is having difficulty as well, because you are an intelligent young man. Let me spell it out for you. It is very easy for one to say and to remember that in the issue of responding to crime and criminal conduct in Trinidad and Tobago, that there's a view in many quarters that the government's inability, and not only just government, but other governments, inability to properly respond to the threat of criminality in Trinidad and Tobago is because of a closeness and an association between government personnel and persons who engage in criminal conduct. And nothing that supports that is to be encouraged in any form or fashion. Is that clear enough for you?
Will there be any further investigations into any other members of your cabinet and suggested links with people with
Anywhere it is found that there is support for that kind of allegation, which would result in great discomfort to the national community, there would be a need for a response. Is that clear enough for you? Okay.
Mr. Burke in an interview with us told us that he's aware, Mr. Burke in an interview with us told us he's aware that he was hearing about his investigations concerning him, that he seems to not get any conclusion. He has not been convicted of any offense. He was detained and subsequently released by doing SOD and sued the state. Is this something that are you aware of any other details?
I am not prepared to go into any debate with Mr. Burke or any citizen, all of whom have entrance rights under the Constitution to live in this country without certain kinds of harassment or whatever. However, I simply want to say to the national community that in treating with the matter of safety, security, crime and criminality and the comfort of our citizens, I hold the office of Chairman of the National Security Council, and I may have a little more information on these matters than any other citizen. That's all I'm prepared to say on that matter.
Also, why did you advise the President the public utilities portfolio should go to you?
Because I can do a lot more work than I do. That's what you think. No, it's a ministry has been vacated, and I required to have someone take responsibility for that ministry, and I saw it fit to take it myself. I never ask anybody to do anything that I wouldn't do myself.
So will you consider, Prime Minister, that if you did pick someone else, you may have faced another controversy?
There's always a possibility. I mean, if I have how many other ministers I have, and how many actions I may take in the future, there's no guarantee that your action will come. I thought I said so early on, there's no guarantee that the action you take will deliver the result that you anticipate. But you do certain things to give you a good chance that you will get the outcome that you anticipate when you take that action.
6 ministers in 2 ministries.
What's that?
6 ministers in 2 ministries,
What is it? I don't understand.
There are 2 ministers in the office of the Attorney General and the other ministry. Could you tell us exactly, are you having a problem finding talented persons
No, sir. It is because I was finding talent why I found 6 to put in there. These are workload arrangements. Okay? Where you have a huge workload, you put a larger number of people. Okay? And sometimes the workload increases, it grows based on what you are engaged in. So counting the ministers in the ministry is not really a good reflection of anything other than the workload of these particular ministries. And I thought I explained that the other day, that the Attorney General's office is an area where we are pursuing an aggressive work program to get some results in the shortest possible time. And the other one is the Ministry of Finance. And if you look at the two issues that are the greatest challenge in Trinidad and Tobago, one is safety and security. And the legislative program that we are pursuing in the coming months would be one that focuses very heavily on those matters, along with others. And of course, the Ministry of Finance, I outlined to you how we are dealing with the state enterprise sector, the BIR, and the whole question of the tax management in Trinidad and Tobago. So it's a workload thing. And I think the talent that we have in the cabinet can measure up to any that was in any other cabinet before, notwithstanding. And when the Prime Minister talks about, the last Prime Minister talked about who can't find talent, I would like to engage a debate with her and match the talent in this cabinet with some of the people that she appointed to her cabinet.
Prime Minister, before you informed Ms. Mcdonald that the appointment to the cabinet will be vote, did you at any point request that she step down voluntarily?
I spoke with Ms. Mcdonald on this matter as soon as it came to my attention. I attended that swearing in. I left it promptly as the documentation was completed and the official photographs were taken, so I had no idea that anything else had gone on. I then traveled to Tobago on Friday night, and at about 7:45 on Friday night, I realized I was informed of these developments. I immediately sought to communicate with Ms. McDonald. I wasn't able to communicate with her until about midnight, and we had some discussions on the matter, and I expressed my concern, and I indicated to her on Friday night how I intended to deal with it.
With all due respect, the question that it poses, did you request that she voluntarily step down before you informed her her appointment would be voted?
Well, she had that option. I mean, that option was always available. I mean, when matters like this what's the word? I just can't back out. When matters like this are in the process of coming out, the word just escapes me. However, when I expressed my concern, the option of resignation was always there. And in these matters, that is always how one deals with it, providing you agree. But the bottom line is, at the end of the day, the Prime Minister, which the office I hold, had to. I could not turn a blind eye to that development.
So, Prime Minister, given Ms. McDonald's personal relationship with these community leaders, and given that she held a substantive cabinet portfolio before first dismissal as Minister of Housing, will there now be a further investigation into whether or not contracts were awarded to people of...
I don't know. I'm not broadening this action into that as a separate issue. Those issues are always there as we look at the general management of the country. But let me just make one thing very clear. All of us as MPs represent all the people of Trinidad and Tobago who reside in our constituency. So having in your constituency persons who may have questions to answer or who may have run afoul of the law is not in itself an offense. And if you represent people, you have to interact with them. But you have a requirement and a responsibility to ensure that that interaction does not in itself become part of the problem.
There will be no further investigation.
I am not in a position to say that to you. I mean, these things evolve, and they're ongoing issues.
What would you say to persons who contend that it is an indictment of your leadership that you were not aware of the close relationship between Ms. McDonald and certain community leaders. I know you talk about interacting with people in your constituency, but interacting is one thing and bringing them to your swearing in is another story altogether. It's just a closeness.
Well, these are interpretations, and I would not take issue with persons who want to indict me for not knowing. There's a lot that I don't know. There's a lot that I don't know. But as I said to you a while ago, the action that I took is based on what I know. Right?
But had you known, would you have made the appointment?
These are speculative things, and I'm not going down that road. But had I known and had I known this, I responded to a development that required an intervention on my part. What I know or what I don't know is another story, right? Because I am not here going to be having a press conference to debate whether I knew that who was going to come to a swearing in with a minister of government. I'm not going to do that. That is, the minister had a responsibility, and I try to choose my language very carefully. The minister had a responsibility not to do anything that would prevent the government from engaging the national community, those who are law-abiding and those who are law-breaking, in such a way that the government preserves its ability to discharge its responsibility to the population. I thought I was clear on that.
But that would have included having a general relationship with the float.
I have a general view. I have a general view. And as I said, all of us, whether it's in Diego Martin, in Laventil, in San Fernando, all of us represent people, some of whom may have issues with the law.
Prime Minister Ms. Mcdonald is the elected MP for the school side. Given the reason you have said, without going into any more detail as to why you removed her from the cabinet, do you have any concern with regard to that issue and her continuing to serve as MP in the House of Representatives?
I have taken no issue with the people of Port of Spain South and their selection, and it remains that way. Port of Spain South has selected the person who they would like to represent them. I am not here taking any issue with Port of Spain South at this time, and one can carry this discussion as far as you're able to. I saw one person carrying it back to the screening in 2015. That's a conversation that can take place. But what has brought us here? A specific development where specific action was contemplated, taken, other actions followed, other actions taken, and I was hoping that I hope that I've clarified, if not all, most of it for you. Okay? Thank you all very much.